Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Chat Reality. I'm Michael.
And I'm Molly.
We are here today to discuss another episode of Survivor 48, episode 8, and we are circling back around to the Challenge All Stars Rivals as well. Now that the finale has just aired this past week, we covered the first couple episodes in the beginning of the season, and we wanted to come back around, check back in on it to tie things up with the finale coverage. So, Molly, how are you doing this week?
Good. It's starting to finally feel like spring weather, like 80 degrees today in Austin, which is nice. Not too cold, not too hot, which is always a great time to be outside and just doing fun things. Kind of going paddleboarding today, which will be fun. What about you?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's Easter as we're recording this. So paddleboarding, yeah, that sounds like a great thing to do when everything else is closed. And
Yeah.
I'm excited because I will be in Austin this coming week to watch episode 9 of Survivor at the Bryson Wen event in Austin. So super excited about that. And yeah, before we get there though, let's look back at episode 8 that just aired this past week. So Chrissy tries to play off her comments at the last tribal council as just lying, just talking smack, when in reality she reveals in her confessional that she meant everything she said about needing to break up the Strong Five alliance. So, what did you think of the way that she played this off? Because I think this was kind of a topic of conversation last week of like, oh, Chrissy, what are you doing? You're kind of blowing up your game here by just kind of announcing everything that you plan to do out in the open at Tribal, but she kind of tried to walk it back a little bit. Do you think that she was successful in that, or should she have gone a different route?
I don't think she was successful in it. I think like those were her real feelings, which obviously we know those were her real feelings, but I don't think she really played that off very well of being like, "Oh, I was just joking." Like that's just such an easy kind of way out if you get away with it, but it's not. Like she I think people were too smart to realize that like it's not the way that she wanted it to come across in that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, once I think that she probably really wishes that she could have like taken back those words, but it's like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once she's blurted it all out, I feel like at Tribal sometimes from what I understand, it's way longer than what we see on TV, and everybody gets asked a bunch of questions, and it's just kind of like you keep getting asked the same thing until you kind of give some sort of answer to it. And so I think she probably just said more than she really meant to say there. And at that point, it's like, what else can you do? I mean, I feel like she did the best she could with how she played it off. But yeah, I mean, I think if I'm anyone else on the tribe, I'm assuming that she meant everything she said there.
Yeah. And then, I mean, later on, full circle moment is that she brings it up again, so she couldn't get away with it.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, by this next tribal that we see in this episode, it's kind of like do whatever you can to save yourself. Like, I think at that point, I don't begrudge her for saying, what she said at this tribal, because at that point, like, it's out in the open.
Yeah.
But at the time before that, yeah, she probably could have hid in the shadows for a little bit longer in that tribe if she had maybe just kind of been a little bit more careful with what she said.
For sure.
But then we get Shaheen telling us that Mary has a very close relationship with David, which is news to me at least. I don't know if you were aware of this or remember that David and Mary were very close, but this was the first time that I remember ever hearing this. And David wants to bring Mary into their big alliance, but Shaheen is a little more skeptical of that. He trusts Camilla more. Were you surprised by that, David and Mary being close news? And what did you think of kind of this debate between bringing Mary versus Camilla?
I feel like I did see Mary and David connecting. I didn't know, like, how close that meant they were, but hearing Shaheen say that, I was like, "Oh, I guess they are close." But I don't know, it's always tricky when people wanna bring someone in and someone else doesn't agree with that person or doesn't trust them as much, so it's hard when they've built trust with each other, but they don't always like their person that they've also built trust with. So I don't know. It'll make for some interesting dynamics here, I think.
Yeah, I think it's always tricky when you wanna bring somebody into an alliance that's already formed, because and I always on the Big Brother retrospective that, RHAP that Taron Armstrong has been doing, he just talked about season 16 of Big Brother, which I think was before your time of watching, but there was very famously this big alliance that started week 1 of that season, and, the Bomb Squad, and then just like a few days later after it was already formed, one of its members, Devin Shepard, like famously just kind of without any asking anyone, just brought in two more members into their alliance. And it was very clear about the fact that like this is an alliance that's already formed and you are being added into it late. And I just don't think that's ever a really smart move, especially when you're not consulting with the other members. And I feel like that's kind of what like David's trying to do here is just kind of bring in Mary without really like getting everyone else's approval and just kind of being like, yeah, I trust her, so she's in. And I feel like that's a very dangerous way to play because you want not only do you want everybody to feel like they had a say in who is getting brought on, if anybody later on, but also that you want that new member to feel like that they are being part of the formation of this alliance. Because I think anyone who feels like they're being brought in late to this is knowing, hey, I'm on the bottom of this, like first, last one in, first one out type of thing. And so if I'm Mary, I'm not very happy about this arrangement if I feel like I'm being brought in late. But I don't know. It feels like from later on in the episode, she really does trust David and that this is a very close relationship. And I guess so far, it doesn't feel like she feels that way.
Yeah. I know, it's interesting because I wouldn't wanna be that last additional person coming into the group because if they've already formed and trusted each other, like, it's obviously harder to build all that trust with everyone else in the group once it's already been a thing.
Yeah. Well, this does come back around later, so we'll get in more into this later on. But next we get Eva telling Shaheen that, and we have to remember that last week's tribal was split. So not everybody is aware of everything that happened at the last tribal, because I kind of forgot this. Like, this is the thing with like a whole week in between episodes sometimes. It's like, I
Yeah.
don't remember everything. That very important factors here to remember. But Eva tells Shaheen, fills him in on kind of what happened at their tribal, that Chrissy mentioned his name and that doesn't sit well with her, and that she wants to get Chrissy out because of this, and that obviously scares Shaheen as well. So it seems like that is the plan at the moment, but things change here very quickly, and that gets a little more complicated than it originally might have seemed. But Mitch then wants to bring the original Siva back together. David's not on board because David's obviously part of the Strong Five Alliance, but Mitch is very passionate about this, and it feels like Siva does have quite a few numbers still in the game, and if they wanted to, it seems like they could maybe form something together. But I don't think that this is going to ever pan out to anything.
Yeah, I don't either. I feel like Mitch just wants to really remain Siva strong, but the rest of his trimates don't feel that way. So I don't know. It's not gonna pan out for how he wants it to.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's like, Mitch is obviously not, for some reason, not a part of the Strong Five Alliance, although Mitch has been amazing at the challenges. And you would think that if there's like a Strong Guys Alliance, Mitch should, in theory, be a part of it.
Yeah, I think it's because he's not as muscular as the rest.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit more, I guess, quiet strength,
Yeah.
but he's been performing very, very well, and if you just base it off of that, it certainly feels like he should be in that group, but he is
Yeah.
not, alas. But then we get to, speaking of challenges, we get to our immunity challenge, and we find out before the challenge that this is going to be played in pairs. So they have to decide on their pairs. Now, if you were doing this, if you were trying to pick a partner for something like this, do you think you would pick somebody who is your closest to, who's your closest alliance member, or would you intentionally not pick that person and maybe instead try to focus on who you think is going to be best at the challenge?
I would want someone good at the challenge, because then that would help my chances and then getting that immunity or option to get that immunity. So And also, I mean, we see with Kyle and Camilla that they also people don't know as well that they're so close. So I think that was smart for them not to choose each other there, because then it goes to show that they're not choosing each other there. People aren't going to suspect that they're close either.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's hard to know because you don't know what the challenge is going into it. And you also don't know if you're going to be competing in pairs necessarily the whole time. Like that, I mean, we see here that once you get to the last two pairs, they're competing against each other. And that might not be the smartest move to pick somebody who is going to be harder to beat in that end. Or sometimes we see on different shows that they say, pick a partner, and then it turns out the whole time that you're competing against that person instead of with that person. So, I think it is tricky sometimes. You don't necessarily want to pick. I feel like you want to pick somebody who's going to be like good enough, like not hold you back if they are pairs, but also that you feel like you would have a reasonable shot at beating if you end up in the end having to compete against them. And that's tricky. That's a very fine line, but I feel like that's kind of the way that I would think of it. And I don't think I would even for a second think about like, oh, I'm closest with this person, like strategically, that's who I want to pick. Like that wouldn't be in my thought process at all.
Yeah, I agree. And like as you said, you don't know what exactly that format was going to be like. So, it's hard to choose. I think like in any kind of pairing, you never know entirely, so
Yeah.
they just did their best.
Yeah. Well, the pairs end up being Camilla and Cheyenne, Eva and Joe, Chrissy and Kyle, Star and Mitch, and Mary and David. So we find out that this is going to be run in stages. Stage one is that each pair races through a narrow tunnel filled with sand and retrieves one puzzle step along the way. Then they race to dig up a second puzzle step, and the three pairs to finish first move on to the next round. So the first two pairs we find then go on the first two pairs out, sorry, the first two pairs who are eliminated in this round have to go on a journey where their vote will be at risk. What did you think of this setup here? Where there's, obviously we have seen all season long that people losing the votes is this trend that continues to go in the new era, and I feel like is only getting more common. Like, I feel like for a while, it was maybe a few times a season there would be a potential lose your vote type thing. And now it feels like it's almost every week. Like, it's so rare now that we get a tribal where just everyone has their vote and is
Yeah.
all at one tribal council and everything's just normal. Every week this time has to have some sort of twist like that. So, what did you think of this kind of setup here?
I didn't like it. I felt like it wasn't fair, because obviously like there's so many having so many different journeys and twists with that, like it doesn't really allow it to be as fluid of a game. Like there's always going to be some sort of hiccup in that, if someone's losing their vote every week. So I just feel like that it wasn't great. And I also, at this point, like we're already at jury, like don't need to have so many twists all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the part of the game where I really just want them to trust their cast to create a good, interesting season. And I think that this constant need to have somebody lose a vote, somebody, the tribe split up, the whatever it is, like I just think that this time, like, we're far enough along now that I think the game is complex enough and there's interesting dynamics. And look, like, is this the most thrilling merge that was post merge that we've seen so far in the new era of Survivor? No, not yet. But it's still like I would rather us just be able to watch them play normally than to constantly be throwing things at them that make them scared to make any sort of big move because they don't know what twist is coming next that's going to throw a wrench in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, the last two teams left standing, we find out then go on a reward for afternoon of tacos, and the stage two that determines that is that they teams use puzzle steps to build a staircase. At the top, they cross a rope bridge using planks, and the first two pairs to finish move on, and at that point, win a reward. Um, and Camilla, Shaheen, and Star and Mitch are the first two teams eliminated that don't get to that point. So they are going to be the ones who have their vote at risk and have to go on the journey. Kyle and Chrissy are eliminated after the second stage, and they are kind of in this purgatory stage where they don't get the reward but also don't have to go on the journey. So they're the only two to go straight back to camp there. And then the stage three, which are just the last two pairs, it is Eva and Joe versus uh, Mary and David. And they are now competing individually for immunity. So the four of them have to all hold onto a pole for as long as they can. It's a classic challenge that has been made a lot more difficult than it used to be. The footholds are a lot smaller than they used to be back in the day, when this used to go for hours, and it used to be just a complete, just like, how bad do you want it type of challenge,
Mhm.
basically. And now it's very, very difficult. You might want it really bad, but you might not be able to hold on. And I prefer the old way, honestly. I really loved when it was just like it lasted so long, and they started bringing like different temptations out to tempt them to come down, and people would start making deals with each other, and I miss that. I feel like I love just immunity challenges when it's just truly, how bad do you want this?
Yeah.
And I feel like now they just don't want them going that long, and so they cut them short by making it really, really difficult. But I liked the original version of this.
Yeah, I didn't like that they had it when it was only gonna be 4 at the end. Like, I wish that we were able to see this challenge because it's a fun one to watch with everyone getting an option to play it. So, that wasn't great. Like, I didn't like that there were stages and they had to get out each time if they were last, and that wasn't great because especially I mean, I guess they wanted it to be more at stake there, but that challenge is always a fun one.
Yeah, I don't mind the stages so much. I like a challenge with stages, but I don't like that it's in pairs. I wish that it was individual, I think, because I don't like when your chance of immunity is just tied to somebody else not being able to do something potentially. And I think that this, like, if it was just a simply reward challenge, I wouldn't mind it because the stakes aren't that high. But for immunity, I don't like when it's something like pairs or big
Yeah.
teams when it's not a tribe stage of the game.
Yeah.
Well, Eva ends up winning immunity, and not only does she win immunity, but we do see later that she also finds an advantage at the reward in her bowl of chips. She finds that she will have to sneak away from camp tomorrow night to the opposite ends of the beach to find out what it is. So we don't know yet what this advantage is, but she does decide that she will keep it a secret since her idol is so public right now that she has. Now, this reward was very controversial
Mhm.
because I don't know if you noticed this, Molly, but
Yeah.
Eva's name tag, they had name tags of where to sit.
Yeah.
And the advantage was in her bowl of chips that was right by her. So if anyone else was to find this, like, they would have had to like have some like ask for the bowl of chips, and Eva would have had to not be the first person to take it. um, what did you think of this? Because there's different theories going around. Some people think it was rigged for Eva specifically to get it. Some people think it was just because she won, that whoever won was going to have the bowl of chips placed next to them, and that, this was just an extra advantage for the immunity winner. What are your thoughts on the intention behind this, and whatever you think, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely understand the controversy of it all just because it does seem very obviously like targeted to give it to Eva in this situation. But we don't know if it were the case of it being like, oh, anyone who's going to win the individual immunity here is going to get the advantage. So I think if they had made that more clear, like saying, like Jeff saying that, oh, you also will get a chance to get an advantage. That could have made it better and seemed more fair that she was the one to have it and find it when it's placed right there. But at least like you understood, like, yeah, there's an advantage there. So it does seem like they were specifically helping Eva just because of the name tags. But I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Yeah, I don't think that it was rigged for Eva. I definitely don't think that. But I think that it was meant to go to the immunity winner. Because of the wording of the clue, or the advantage, it just says like, and I don't have the exact wording in front of me, unfortunately, but I believe it said something like, due to your performance in the challenge, you are getting this advantage. And so that to me indicates that this was meant for the winner, whoever that would have been. But that said, I still don't like it. I don't like the fact that it's like this, the rich keep getting richer. Like I feel like the purpose of an advantage should be that it helps the person who is on the bottom have a chance at crawling back and getting a majority alliance to crumble. And they might not have the numbers, but this advantage could potentially, if they earn it, allow them to have a fighting chance. And that, to me, to have an advantage of somebody who's already winning immunity, it just doesn't make any sense. It just like helps a big alliance stay a big alliance and steamroll the game, and that is no fun to watch. So I don't know, I just don't like the thought of that, assuming that that is the intention behind this. I just don't love it, and I think that they're kind of losing the plot a little bit by adding that in.
Yeah, agreed. Hopefully they don't do that again because they've definitely probably heard a lot of the backlash against it.
Yeah, well, and Survivor 49 just today, or maybe yesterday, went to start filming, so hopefully it was in time for them to see this reaction to this episode, and maybe if they had decided to do something like this again, maybe make a little tweak there and cut that out. So
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see in September, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, Chrissy and Kyle are the only ones to go back to camp right after the challenge, since they did not lose or win, really. They were right in the middle there. And Chrissy tells Kyle that she wants to make a big move here by getting out Joe. So Kyle, however, prefers Shaheen because he's closer to Joe. So he prefers to potentially get out Shaheen here. What did you think of this? What is the best move, do you think, to kind of cut the head of the snake off and get out Joe, or potentially go around and get out Shaheen instead, or someone like that?
I don't know. I think every time they bring up either Joe or Shaheen, I'm just like, there's no way they're gonna get that. But I feel like I don't know. I think Shaheen would be the better move just because he's better strategically. Joe is really good socially and at challenges and stuff, but I think his overall strategic game is lacking. But Shaheen is really good at that, and obviously, like in his confessionals, I always feel like he's so smart and what he's saying, and I'm like, wow, he's maybe he's getting a winner at it. I don't know, but I just think it'd be hard to go after Shaheen right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love Chrissy's mentality here. I love that she's just like, gotta cut off the head of the snake. Let's make the big move. Let's do this. I also understand Kyle's being like, I'm closer to Joe. Like for me, for my game, getting out Giant is probably better. But I also didn't really know that Joe and Kyle were that close. So I don't know. I feel like I don't know why, but I feel like this season I'm having a little bit of a harder time than normal in the new era determining like who's close with who. I feel like we're just kind of learning new information randomly, but it's not based on anything we're seeing. It's just like them saying, "Yeah, I'm close with this person." It's kind of more like Australian Survivor editing in a way, where it's like there's so many people and you can't keep track of it. But yeah, I would have honestly been happy with either at this point. I want this strong five alliance to be broken up, just personally for the sake of fun TV.
Mhm.
So, but I like Shine. Like I think I would rather just like for TV reasons, I'd rather probably see Joe go just because I think Shine is more fun to watch.
Yeah, I
But
agree. I think, I mean, I still can't forget about his singing. So like, maybe we can
yes,
see that again.
yeah, and I think I just appreciate a fan. Yeah, like I
Yeah,
think Cheyenne's like he's been trying to get on this show for so long. He was an alternate for 46 and got on this time, and I think that even though he's in this kind of strong five alliance, I feel like if anyone's going to like just realize that we don't want to see this alliance just steamroll, and he's just going to kind of make a move at some point in the next couple of weeks just because, like, he gets bored and wants to, dismantle this big,
Yeah.
unfun alliance. Well, then we see the journey. And this journey, I liked okay. I don't know how you felt about it. I thought it was better than the journeys we've seen on this season, at least so far. There was a bamboo that's filled with gray balls and red balls. Red balls are bad. On your turn, you take 1 or 2 balls from the end and place them in your chute. The first player to have 3 red balls loses their vote. Now, look, I don't love a journey just in general, especially one where the vote is at stake. But at least there was some strategy to this.
Yeah, I agree. It did seem like at least it wasn't just totally random because you could grab 1 or 2. So it wasn't like, oh, you only grab 1, and then it's falling on you.
Right.
Every time if you can only do that 1 ball at a time. But it did make sense once they got each like when Star got the first red ball like to target her there. And that's who ended up losing their vote. But I feel like overall, like if we had to see another challenge, like this one was okay.
Yeah, because like not only is it you want to avoid you losing your vote, but if you think hard and if you're able to kind of figure out the pattern and like try to use some strategy, you can try to make it so that like someone you're aligned with doesn't lose their vote either. Like you can be like, okay, I'm gonna take if I take 2 balls here and then they take 1. But like there's some ways to think about it and try to kind of sway it to get the person you want to lose their vote. So I appreciated that aspect of it. I also, I guess, liked the fact that the 3 of them were doing this together because we've seen some journeys in the past where everybody's separated. And then, to me, the only fun part of a journey, and this is more pre merge, not even really here, but it is on the pre merge where you can get the 3 people from the 3 different tribes to interact, cross tribe,
Mhm.
and form cross tribal bonds or potentially even cross tribal feuds if they're competing against each other to like win some sort of advantage, and then someone screws
Yeah.
someone over and then they go into the merge and that relationship might be complicated because of what happens. So I that to me is the only like fun reason to have a journey. And so if none of that's going to be a factor, I don't want to see it. But here it's already post merge, so that's not even really a factor, but it was better than it could have been.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, now they all know each other, so it's not like that was
Yeah.
really great to see. It was more just like, okay, who's gonna lose their vote?
Exactly. So, yeah, as you said, Star ends up losing her vote, unfortunately. Sorry to Starbase 48 on Twitter. But yes, then we go back to camp. Everybody's back at camp now. And David and Mary tell Joe and Eva that they want Camilla voted out tonight instead of Chrissy, so that Cheyenne doesn't flip on them in favor of working with her because they see that Cheyenne and Camilla are close, and that worries them. Joe tells Kyle about this, who is not happy, and Kyle fills Camilla in and tells her that they have to vote Chrissy to avoid this from happening. So I appreciated Kyle really going up for Camilla here and not just kind of folding and being like, okay, guess I'm going to lose my number 1. But he sees how important Camilla is to his game and having her in the game is, and he is willing to fight for it.
Yeah. No, I was happy to see that. I feel like this was almost giving away that they were working together, but not
Yeah.
quite. So I was getting nervous about that. But it seemed like David did notice it a little bit, but then he didn't bring it up again. So it was like it was fine. Like in the confessional, he said something about it, but I don't think it was really top of mind, or maybe even like the producers were feeding him that. Like I don't know if David was thinking of it at first. But obviously, like Kyle and Camilla are working together. They just don't outwardly show that.
Yeah, no, and you're right. Like that did worry me too. Like I was like, "Oh, Kyle, like I appreciate you working, but I wish that he was maybe working it a little bit more behind the scenes than like
Mhm.
really fighting so openly to keep Camilla because yeah,
Yeah.
like if they had both been selling the story of the fact that they are not close, then like why is he so against her leaving? So like that would certainly raise red flags for me if I was in, David's position or Joe's position or Eva. But I still did appreciate the fact that he wasn't going to just give it up, give her, up for going with the alliance, because I feel like so many people probably would be willing to do that. And they're like, well, I have this person as, my number one, but I don't want to upset the numbers that are on my side here. And, this can show my loyalty to them, to that I'm willing to give up Camilla. So I appreciated that he didn't have that mentality about it, because losing Camilla here would have been very, very tough for me.
Oh, I know.
That would have been very sad.
I don't want
Uh,
Camilla to leave.
yeah. But Kyle gets Joe to tell the group that they need to vote Chrissy because Chrissy has been floating his name around. And he says that they will go Camilla tomorrow, no matter what. But David and Eva aren't budging. They are not hearing of this. So David and Kyle get into a little bit of an argument about it. And David thinks, like we said, that Kyle is being too protective of Camilla. Um, Going into tribal, what did you think was going to happen?
I was thinking it was gonna be Chrissy still, like, I thought they were trying to persuade us into thinking it was Camilla, but then it not actually being Camilla. So, I mean, obviously, it could have been Camilla, but I think that overall, I still had a feeling it wasn't gonna be her.
I actually really thought it was going to be Camilla. And maybe I'm
Really?
just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm too manipulated by the edit. But like, I feel like they, I, I don't know. I felt like they didn't even have enough to show us of like potentially it being somebody else. Like, it just felt like we ended on it being like, yeah, okay. Kyle being like, or Joe really being like, well, I give up then. Like, okay, then we'll go Camilla if you guys are so strong on it. Like, that's kind of where we ended things. And yeah, Kyle was still not happy about it, but it didn't seem like there was enough of a wave of people potentially being willing to go another way, where I was like, well, they don't even have anything to like make us think it's something else. So I guess this is just going to be a really obvious vote for Camilla. But no, it wasn't that. At Tribal, Chrissy kind of maybe dug her own grave a little bit. I mean, I think it was still going to probably not go that way regardless. But Chrissy continues to fight to tell people like, go against this strong five alliance. Like, don't just lay down and die. Like, you have to form a resistance here. And she specifically calls out the close bond between Joe and Eva, saying, like, in any other season, they would be a target, the two of them being so close, but for some reason, everyone's okay with it. David really argues back with her that the strong guys are used as shields season after season, and now we're saying enough is enough. And I mean, look, I love a good protest, but I don't think this is the cause worth fighting for here.
No. Yeah, I feel like with Chrissy saying that though, like maybe it's gonna light a fire under some people now going back next week and seeing like what's gonna happen, who's gonna win immunity. Like that's gonna have a lot to do with it, I think. But overall, I think they should be targeting that strong five.
Yeah, this like to me felt such like a I don't even mean this in a good way. It sounds like I might like mean this in a good way, but I really don't. But like this felt very like an old school tribal of like having this villain just being like I don't know, like David just feels like such an old school Survivor player and villain to me that we haven't seen someone like him in the new era, really. Like to me, like I haven't been this angry watching a tribal, I don't think, in the new era at all. Like, I just feel like there's no, I mean, Jeff says, like, we don't want villains, but like, I don't know. Like to me, this just didn't even feel like a fun villain watching. I don't know. I was just kind of like grossed out by David, the way that David was talking to Chrissy, and I don't know. It just like it made my stomach just kind of turn a little bit.
Yeah. I didn't like David in this episode at all. I feel like he just is I don't know if it's the edit or just like his personality just annoying me more here. But Yeah, I didn't like that either.
And look, like, I'm not saying anything. I'm sure David is a wonderful person in real life. I am not saying that I don't like, I don't like him as a person, but just as the way that he is playing this game, I don't. I didn't like the way that he handled this tribal at all. Like, I agree when Camilla said that he's doing a terrible job of jury management. I totally agree with that. I just don't. Other than his strong five alliance, like I'm sure Joe and Eva and them like will, happily vote for him in the end if he's there. But I just can't see the vast majority of these players, like if he continues to kind of be this way and think this way, that I just don't see them respecting his game at the end.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think they would.
Well, it does end up that Chrissy is voted out unanimously here. I'm sure we're going to get kind of at the beginning of next episode how it switched from Camilla to Chrissy. I can't imagine that it was just tribal. Like, I'm sure that they had conversations that we didn't see that will kind of get a little bit more of the right, right before tribal, we last minute decided to switch, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like we have to get something like that at the beginning of next episode to kind of explain why it didn't end up being Camilla. But look, if we had to lose somebody, Chrissy or Camilla, I'm glad it was Chrissy, but I was sad and I was surprised by how much I liked Chrissy this season.
I
Like,
know.
preseason, I thought Chrissy was going to potentially be the first one out. I did not love her pregame interviews, and it seemed like she didn't really know what she was getting into, but she was really fun to watch.
I agree. I was sad that she left. She was also on my draft team. So I feel like now I've lost another player, so or another
Yeah.
contestant here, which is sad. But I feel like Chrissy did well for like how long she lasted. Like I'm still impressed that she made it this far. So she did a good job.
Yes, she did. She is the second member of our jury now. I loved Cedric's tiny little bench that he was sitting on. That made me laugh. I hope they don't grow it. I hope that everybody just has to like sit on top of each other at the jury.
That would be funny.
Yeah. But, anyways, that closes our Survivor 48, Episode 8, Chapter 4 this week. And let's move on to the Challenge All Stars Rivals. Take it away, Molly.
Yes. So now the season has ended. We talked about it in the beginning after the first episode to share our thoughts and predictions, which I feel like we were kind of in the right in some ways of thinking that an all boys team could be the one to take it all. And that's what happened. Spoiler alert. But overall, I thought that this season was a good season. It was interesting because they went into it not knowing that they were going to be in a rivals aspect of it. So I think that made for it to be more intriguing and just overall like the fighting and just the drama. I think that also was interesting to see this season. But what did you think overall?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this season. I thought that the first like 4 or 5 episodes were kind of rough just because it was constantly Adam and Steve going in every single week against another team, and that's no fun to watch. The Adam and Steve being the house unanimous house vote basically every single week. But then once that phase of the game ended and we started to get different teams going in and being voted for, it really picked up steam. And I thought, yeah, I love a rival season. It had been a long time since we had seen that on the show. I think Final Reckoning was technically the last rival season, although it technically wasn't. And that was back in 2018. So it's been a really long time, and people have been clamoring for it for a long time. And I think doing it on an all star season like this was perfect, and it was a really fun way to do it. I feel like even some of the teams who we thought at the beginning, like, what's their rivalry exactly? Like, Anissa and Ashley Mitchell. Like, everybody at the start of the season was like, what is their beef? We'd never seen them fight on the show before. And then in like episode 3, I think the whole episode was about their rivalry. Like, they were one of the first to really like have a big fight with each other during the season. So yeah, I really did enjoy the season a lot, and I think we saw a lot of these teams have a very different relationship coming out of it than they did going into it, which is always kind of, I think, the goal of a season like this, to have that sort of either growth or descent of their relationship, potentially ending hating each other more than ever. So, yeah, I thought it was a really good season, and I'm excited to kind of delve a little deeper into it.
Yes, agreed. So before we get more into the finale of the season, we can also just talk about the finalists and their games and their journeys throughout the season. So first up, we had Melissa and Nicole in the finale. So I feel like that relationship or their friendship, whatever this is an interesting one. But I think they did earn their spot there in the finals. So, what did you think overall?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely they earned their spot in the final, and that's like the one thing with I'm not a huge fan of like this whole like you have to have a star and to make it to the final. Like, I don't know, I kind of go back and forth on that a little bit, but the one thing that I think it does do is you feel like okay, none of these four just like coasted to the end and didn't have to ever see an elimination. Like they did have to earn their way there somewhat at the very least. And yeah, I think Melissa and Nicole definitely did. Now, their relationship, I don't exactly know how close they got this season. It seems like they may have crossed a line a little bit considering that Nicole was in a relationship outside of the house, but yeah, they were they were fun to watch. I mean, they're two like two sisters that just like can't stand each other but also have like a love deep down for each other, and when they're arguing I can't understand a single word either of them are saying, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
And,
But their accents, I was like, what are they saying?
yeah, I mean, like they're they need subtitles constantly. But yeah, I mean they were fun to watch. Like I absolutely think I can see why they partnered them up together, and yeah, they seemed like for a long time during the season they hated each other more than ever, but by the end it seemed like they got to a good place, and I remember seeing pictures of them together after the season finished filming, and so when they like for the longest time during the season were like hating each other, it seemed like I was like, geez, how do they get to the point where they were like having dinner after the season finished filming? But I think we see that now that they
Yeah.
did kind of end in a pretty good place. So I don't know what their status is at the moment, but I think they've been on like Instagram Live together as the season's been airing. So I think they're good. But not in person together, but just like they've been talking or like
Online.
involved in other like with
Yeah.
other people's Instagram lives. So like they're not on bad terms at the very least. So that's nice to see.
Yeah, that's good. And next up, we had Frank and Sam. So they're also, I feel like, I mean, I think everyone in the final did deserve their spot, but I definitely feel like with Frank and Sam there, it made sense that they made it here. And Frank has, I mean, throughout the season was very strategic and thinking about different gameplays, and so I think that that was good to see. That he did make it, even though he didn't end up winning, but did make it to the final.
Yeah, Frank, it was really, really nice to see Frank back. Because it had been, I think, let me think, what year was Free Agents? That was 2013, 2014. So it had been 11 years since we had seen Frank on the show. And he was someone that for a long time people were wanting to see back. And it had been even longer since we had seen Sam.
Yeah.
I think it was like 2012 when she last played. So I mean, their relationship has a long history. I mean, they were on the Real World together, Real World San Diego together. So they started this reality TV journey together. They ended in a really bad place in 2012 during the final, and we'll get into it. But it was a very kind of similar situation to the first checkpoint of this final.
Mhm.
And I think Frank spent this entire season really trying to like prove that he's a changed person since then and the way that he treated Sam at that time as a partner. And he I think was pretty successful at that for most of the season. I love that he played this season like he's never going to come back again, which maybe he won't. But like a lot of these people on the flagship challenge in particular play such a scared game because they know like if I screw someone over, I'm gonna see them again next season probably, and I don't wanna do that, like, I don't wanna screw a close ally over because then next season, nobody's gonna trust me and I'm gonna go home, and I love that Frank is just like, "Screw that, I'm gonna play this season for this season, and, leave nothing out on the table," and I think that it's it may not always play like that if he does end up getting callbacks after callback, like, and sees like, okay, maybe I do need to think about the future a little bit, and I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I hope he comes back, but I hope that he continues to play like that. But I think it's a lot easier to do that when you don't think you're going to come back anytime soon. So I
Yeah.
understand why people don't, but I love to see Frank play that way. And I love to see his relationship with Sam throughout the season. Like, I think, they really did come a long way. We see that they kind of, have a little bit of discourse during the final. They kind of seem to fall back into their old way of doing a final together, but at the end of the day, I do think that they both seem to really be in a good place still, and if nothing else, like, that must have been very worth it for both of them, I think, to kind of repair this relationship and show each other that, like, there has been a lot of growth over the last 10, 11 years, and yeah, it was really fun to watch them throughout this whole season.
Yeah, agreed. And we also had Shane and Devon in the final, which I was excited because I like Devon, and so I was proud that she made it here. And obviously, them working together in the final was like totally different than how they worked together throughout the season. But it worked out that they made it there in general. But I think that they obviously like have big personalities, butted heads a lot, but I think we see them also like when they leave, they're like, yeah, like we're good now, like kind of thing, which is nice to see. But they definitely had a journey to get there.
Yes, they did. Yeah, this was one pair that I actually like truly thought going into this season that they were going to be totally fine. Like, I thought, okay, that was such a like a petty beef back in Final Reckoning, which was again like 7 years ago. Like, I feel like they can get over that. Like, they seem like the type of people who would work very closely together, actually. Like, I feel like Shane is very similar to, like, Jason Roy, who was Davon's, like, number one closest ally, best friend on her first season of Big Brother. And to me, like, Jason and Shane have a lot in common, just personality wise. And I thought, like, if they are forced to, like, work together, I feel like they're going to fall into a very good, like, relationship, partnership. But that didn't really happen for a long time. And I mean, we saw in the penultimate episode before the final started that Shane almost quit the season.
Yeah.
He packed his bags and left because he did not like the way that Davon was talking about him, and he felt like he was, I think, like get a bad edit, and he just didn't like how this all was playing out and being the villain, and Davon thinking that he wants to be the villain, and like I think that he was just kind of like over the whole thing. Now he also didn't treat Davon well in that challenge before right before the final. He was really screaming at her, and I don't blame Davon for being upset with him, and just kind of, she said that she knew that he was like behind her when she said that when they were out that night, and that's why she said it, because she was just like trying to get under his skin.
Yeah.
And it worked. But then they had a good conversation right after that, and they said, like, we need to communicate better. They came up with like a safe word, a code word, and it seemed like throughout the final that they, for the most part, worked really well together. So I was happy to see that, if anything, they ended on a good note. And Davon has said, I just listened to the official challenge podcast where Davon was co-hosting, and she said that she and Shane, after the season, have become really close friends, actually, or at least like friends. I don't know about close friends, but like they're good. So I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's good to hear. It was funny also. It almost felt like breaking the fourth wall when Shane was like, "Well, this is good TV." That he
Yeah.
was packing his bags and then didn't leave, but like it almost seemed like he was going to. So that made for some. It did make for some good TV.
It did. And I
Um,
think that was a joke. Like, I don't think he did the
yeah.
whole thing just for good TV, but like, that
No,
was funny.
I agree, but it was just funny to see that. And we also had Adam and Steve in the finale, so I feel like that was no surprise, even though like because they kept getting targeted, but they made it there, and I feel like they were just a strong team. They obviously had like they butted heads just because like they're both strong personalities, but like overall, it seemed like they were going to be working together well.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think their beef was so new. I mean, they've known each other for probably longer than any other team in this whole season.
Yeah.
But their beef, like specifically why they're rivals, had just happened the season prior. So it's not that deep. Like, it was like, I mean, Steve took Adam's star before the final. Like, that is gameplay related beef that I feel like is so, should be so easy to get over. And I don't think it was for Adam necessarily. Like, we saw him in the last episode before the final. Like, saying that he wants an apology from Steve still, and it's just like, oh my god,
Yeah.
can we not? Like, so much has happened since then. Like, do we really have to like bring this all back up and ask for an apology right now? I don't know, but yeah, they seem to be totally fine after the first couple episodes. They really just. I think they realized they're very similar people, and they just like that's probably why they've butted heads in the past. But they work together really solidly, and I certainly, being that they're the only all male team remaining in the final, I thought that certainly gave them an edge. I don't love these mixed teams, mixed gendered teams thing. I wish that it was either all guy guy, girl girl, or all guy girl, and I think that that would be the most fair, but still ended up being very, very close. So that almost didn't end up being a factor here. But
Yeah.
yeah, I certainly went into this final assuming that they were the most likely to win.
Yes. Well, speaking of the final, let's get into more of the episodes 11 and 12 as it was split into two episodes. So, starting off in episode 11, we see that Melissa says that her and Nicole are just friends and not romantic. But we did see them getting a little bit flirty and having some moments together in previous episodes. And overall, we knew that Nicole had a girlfriend back home. So do you think that she crossed the line there for having a girlfriend?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I think that that was. I am sure. I don't know. I don't think they are still together. I don't think Nicole and her girlfriend are still together. But if they were when this season started airing, I can't imagine that her girlfriend was very happy to watch this. I think that, look, I don't know whether they actually like technically crossed a line in terms of like things getting physical. It certainly the show tried to make it seem that way, but it's possible that they didn't. We didn't technically actually see anything, but it was certainly rumored before this season started airing that they did hook up, and it seems to, in all signs, seem to lead that way. But even if it was just like the, like wrestling in the gym that we saw and like picking her up and all this stuff, like I think even that's probably crossing a line considering their past.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, agreed. I definitely it felt like she was definitely cheating on her girlfriend in those moments. So that wasn't great.
yeah,
But if they're not together anymore, that's for the best. Because not meant to be together if she was gonna just go cheat on her on the show.
absolutely.
So yeah. And then we also have a dinner together. They have their final dinner and talk about what they would do with the money if they win. And it was kind of just a wholesome moment. But then Devon breaks up the moment when Shane says that he wants to be friends with Devon after they leave. And then Devon refuses to stay the same. Which I mean, now it's like funny because now they actually are friends.
Yeah.
But in the show, like in this moment, Devon was just like, no, I'm not saying that if I don't feel that. So I respected her for not saying it back in that moment. I mean, she wasn't gonna lie and be like, sure, we're good in that moment. Which now she could say they are friends. But then at that dinner, she didn't feel that way. So do you think she was justified in that?
I go back and forth a bit because I think on one hand, like they're in public, like, they're with, I don't know, everybody's together, it's like, this is such a wholesome moment, like, I feel like it's so easy to just, like, say something that will, like being like, "Okay, I appreciate that. I'm not there right at this moment, but I'm open to seeing how things play out in the future." I don't know, something to that effect where it's like not lying, not being fake, but just like saying something to make things not really uncomfortable and awkward in front of everybody during this like final dinner of the season. But I did hear Davon say again on the podcast that this was kind of gameplay a little bit because she wanted the other teams to not realize that she and Shane had had a good moment after like the week prior, and like that they were still not in a good place, and that would make the other teams think that they're not a big threat going into the final because they're not in a good place and they're not going to communicate well. But now obviously they've had a good moment and like they seem to be good, and this was a little bit of strategy to make the other teams kind of like not think of them as a threat. So that if that's the case, that was very smart, I think, because I think that worked.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I think there's probably like I respect and understand her not wanting to be fake and being like, yeah, we're gonna be great friends after this. But probably if this was totally genuine, probably a little bit of a better way that she could have gone about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's good that she was able to like also say that the strategy aspect of it. I didn't hear that podcast. So I think that makes sense too, because I mean then people were like, oh, they're not gonna be strong.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, she could have said something of like, well, maybe in the future.
Yeah, because
uh,
there are moments in the finals a lot oftentimes, like, during the eating challenge where, like, the other teams can kind of, like, sabotage other teams that they think are threats, and in a case like that, if the other teams think that Shane and Davon are just gonna be bickering back and forth and arguing and not being able to perform well, like, then that's a good chance that maybe teams wouldn't think to have the effort to, like, to sabotage them because they're gonna sabotage themselves. So I think that if that was really the case, that is a very smart move on their part.
yeah. For sure. Well, for the format of the final, TJ explains that the teams will be fighting for stars and they'll have to go through the dunes to an oasis, to a lagoon, and finally to a temple. And then they will run through a series of checkpoints, and in the order that they finish will be determining how many stars they get at each of those checkpoints. So at the end, all the stars will be tallied, and whichever team has the most will win. So I think this was pretty self-explanatory of a format here, but what were your thoughts on overall and your thought and just how this is set up?
Yeah, I would say generally I prefer finals that are not checkpoints like this. Just because I always like to be able to very clearly see who's in the lead, who's not, and this can be kind of hard to track, kind of who which teams are doing well and which aren't. And also I just think like in general, I don't know, I think of a classic final being like, okay, we're testing like, lots of different abilities and like, have different checkpoints, sure, but like I always prefer when like there's not these kind of equalizers in that way. However, I think that's better on the flagship, and I understand that with All Stars, they want to be able to get people who are, a little bit older, a little bit maybe not as in shape, and have them have a fair chance of winning this. And that's what All Stars is for. And so I think for that purpose, these checkpoints where there's breaks in between and like, things aren't always just like not all the checkpoints are physical. I think that this works very well. Like I enjoyed this final a lot, and I think for being an All Stars final, I thought it was a very good one.
Yeah. No, I haven't watched that many seasons of the challenge,
Yeah.
obviously, but I always am interested when it's like when it gets to the final and it gets so much more intense. I'm like, wow, like this is what's like I just want to fast forward through the challenge season to get to the final almost to like see
Right.
what that's like because they can be so intense and exciting. And I did feel that way. I mean, I get like, yeah, you didn't always know who was in the lead, but it always felt like it was close in this regards
Mhm.
for like the top two teams. It felt like it was close. So that made it for I think, more exciting this time around. Like, maybe if it wasn't close at all, it wouldn't have been that
Yeah.
exciting, but I thought it was okay. Like, overall, I was happy to see it.
Yeah, and you saw, like, compared to the Challenge 40 final, like, how different this was. That was
Yeah,
so swimming heavy and, like, very, very physical. Like, that to me is, like, a very good comparison of, like, how a flagship final is different than an All-Stars final. Like,
yeah.
it's just not going to be as physically demanding, which I think is a good thing because that way they can get different types of people back and people being willing to go back when they know, like, okay, it's not going to quite be what the flagship challenge is and I'm willing to do this, might not be willing to do that one.
Yeah. No, I know. I was like, "Wow, they really have to get in shape for the flagship finals."
Yeah, for sure.
That is what it's like.
Mhm.
But for these checkpoints, as you said, not all of them were super physical, but this first one was. So, the first one was coding ball, and the teams had to run down the hill, find a series of symbols to memorize in order to crack the code, and then run back up the hill and solve to a solving station while passing a ball back and forth. If the ball dropped, they had to start over. And Sam struggles here because of her fears of sand dunes after the last final that she and Frank were on in Battle of the Seasons in 2012, which you had mentioned previously. So that was hard to watch. I feel like we knew that, like, once that was happening, like it was hard from the start of Frank and Sam there. So they actually didn't actually finish, but Melissa and Nicole got first here. Then it was Shane and Devon, and then Adam and Steve. So this one was a little bit shocking to see Adam and Steve come in third, but because they weren't getting their code as quickly. So that was kind of interesting too to see that it was strategic at the end of it, but just physical in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, this was almost hard to watch Sam in this one just because, like, of all things, I mean, like, the first checkpoint, you get, like, this memory rushing back of your first final, like, that was so traumatizing for her that, like, I don't blame Sam at all for having a bit of a I don't know if it was a panic attack, but, like, I mean, I don't blame her at all for having PTSD from that
Yeah.
first final of hers because that would be traumatizing for anyone. I think the way that she was treated during that final, and it was like the exact same thing she had to do here. So I don't blame her at all for timing out here. But yeah, I think that's a rough way to start.
Yeah, for sure. And then in the second checkpoint, we had barrels. And so for this one, the teams
Hashtag barrels because it was a hashtag.
hashtag barrels, sorry. But they had to use only the rope and the barrel to transport all of their barrels from one end of the hashtag to the other end, which was funny. I was like, "Why is this a hashtag?"
I know that
Um,
that really did seem random. I don't know why it was
yeah.
a hashtag, but like, sure.
I mean, it was part of the theme, I guess.
Yeah.
But then they had to get all of the green barrels on one side of the brown barrels. Oh, sorry. The goal is to get all of the green barrels on one side and the brown barrels on the other. And then once they're all placed on the platform, they have to solve the puzzle. And then the middle barrel will have a fixed number, and then the surrounding barrels all have to add up to that. So also part of it was math here, which was interesting to see, like, who was strong in that aspect of it. Like, once you got all of your barrels there. So here, Shane and Devon got first place, and they got their 4 stars here. And then Adam and Steve with 3 stars, Melissa and Nicole with two, and then Frank and Sam did finish this one, so they earned their first star in this finale. So I feel like this was more interesting to watch just because they actually all finished it here too. Um, but what did you think?
Yeah, I liked this one a lot, and I thought at this point I was like, oh my god, I think Shane and Devon might have this. Like they had
Yeah,
come in second on the first one, which was a more physical one, and then came in first on this one, which was more mental. And I was like, wow, I mean, that's both different sides of the things that they're gonna be doing on this final, probably. Like I think they have a good shot. They seem to be doing really well and at the top of both kind of aspects here of this final. And like I really was if I would have had to place a bet, I would have placed my bet on Shane and Devon at this point to win.
yeah. I agree. And I was getting excited because I was like, wow, like they're gonna take over Adam and Steve.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Well,
No.
obviously it didn't happen, but it was close.
Yeah, we were so innocent. No.
I know. And then in our third checkpoint, it was called Towered Out. So these now the teams will build a giant tower out of 28 baskets using a giant bungee sling. And then every team has one ball that they can throw at another team's tower at any time to try to sabotage them. But then they're also able to play defense and like block that
Yeah.
shot essentially. So Adam tries to sabotage Frank and Sam since they sent him into the jungle, but then he misses. And then Frank sabotages Shane and Avon since they were in the lead, and that did hit them. And then Shane tried to retaliate against Frank and Sam, but then Frank blocks it. So there's only really one successful sabotage here, which ended up being their favor because it drastically moved down Shane and Devon. They were probably going to win it. But
Yeah.
then Adam and Steve won first place here. Then Frank and Sam got second. So this was good redemption a little bit for Frank and Sam that they were able to get more stars here. And then Shane and Devon got 2 stars, and Melissa and Nicole finished last with 1 star because their communication was not good during
They
this
were so
challenge.
fun to watch during this. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
But
But
this one
yeah,
was an
no, this
interesting
one
one.
was I think back now like hearing that, I didn't even think about this, that if Shane and Davon had been able to block the shot, they could have won this whole final. If they had gotten 4 stars instead of two, they would have won. They were down by
Yeah.
1 star at the end. Oh my god, that's so crazy to think about. I didn't even think about that until like this very second. Ah, that must be so hard to think about. But no, this one I really like the fact that they had the chance to sabotage, but like also block and retaliate. I like that anytime that these teams get a chance to like have some sort of gameplay against each other and sabotage, like I like that aspect of a final because otherwise I don't love when finals are just constantly physical and no chance of like having any sort of gameplay involved. That's not as fun to watch for me. So I appreciated like this aspect, and then later on within the faux challenge, I appreciated that aspect as well. So yeah, I like this one. This one was fun.
Yeah, for sure. And next up, we had as our fourth checkpoint, Camping Chaos. So now the teams will race up a hill where they'll find camping setup with 42 very precisely placed items.
Very.
And they must recreate that by transporting one item at a time. So it's a lot of running, and Steve had pulled something like in his first 5 seconds of running. So that was not good for him. So they actually struggled in this checkpoint here. Also, they argued over the napkin folding and how that was supposed to be placed, but ends up being that Shane and Avon get first place, then Frank and Sam in second, Melissa and Nicole in third, and Adam and Steve finishing last. So this one was an interesting one because it obviously did include a lot of running, and so here Frank was able to make up a lot of that time because he's a runner, and also very good at precisely placing those items. So I was proud that they got second there, but I'm happy that Shane and Devon got first because I was rooting for them, and I was like, yes, they're doing well. But overall, this one was just kind of like a all right, do what you can do. Copy this placement.
Yeah, I mean, the fun part of this, I think, was watching Adam and Steve like
Yeah.
just argue about that napkin, and Adam had like pointed out he had done it right, and then Steve was like, "No, it's a rectangle, not a square," or whatever he said, and undid it, and then that ended up being that Adam was right about that, and that's a struggle when you don't have good communication during something, or not communication. I guess it was just kind of a
Being
false
stubborn
memory in your head about what
and
it
just being
was.
stubborn.
Yeah,
Yeah,
being stubborn. Yes, that's a good way of
yeah,
putting it.
yeah.
But yeah, they were that was fun to watch for them, and then TJ at the very end was like, Adam, you were right the whole time about the napkin, and it's like but yeah, that I really, again, this was the end of the episode 11, and I was like, I think Shane and Devon got this, but alas.
Yeah. Because then, as that's how episode 11 ends, but then in episode 12, the final episode, they have the final checkpoint, which was the fucking trivia, which is funny play on words there.
Yeah.
But each team has a big bowl of pho, and there were also various shot glasses with disgusting contents. And they had to play trivia. TJ asked series of questions, and if the team got the question wrong, they have to put one of the shot glasses into their bowl. But if they got it right, then they can put it into anyone else's bowl, and then they are gonna have to eat that. And then after all the questions have been asked, they must finish up whatever in their bowl. So this one was not fun to watch at the end. I like literally just like closed my eyes. Like
Yeah.
I just didn't watch what was happening. But Adam and Steve finished first. Frank and Sam got second. Shane and Devon got third here, and then Melissa and Nicole ended up last with 1 star.
Yeah, I do not like eating challenges, so this was one that, yeah, I agree with you. I did not. I kind of will fast forward and didn't look about the when they were eating, but I thought it was interesting again that they got to kind of like choose another team if they got the question right to sabotage, and it was interesting that Shane picked Melissa and Nicole for that, thinking that they were in second when they were actually in third. So that was kind of interesting, but and again, like that's something that at least this was close, so it was kind of hard for them to like figure out who was in the lead and who wasn't with this format, because there wasn't like one team that was just like in last place for all of them or first place for all of them. So it was a pretty even battle up until this point, and so Shane was wrong about who was in second place behind them. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. No, that was interesting to see that aspect of it, but he was wrong, obviously, is what you said, what was going on there. But this one also, I feel like didn't totally matter of like what. I mean, I guess it did. I don't know how bad these tasted. I mean, it looked like it was bad because they were like the way they were
Yeah.
reacting to it. But I didn't totally know.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't like eating challenges.
Yeah, not great. But next up, we had the sixth checkpoint, high tide. The teams will race down the steep sand dunes here, and then they paddled 1 mile on a boat before getting to the shore and racing to the finish line. So here, another sand dune, but this one was easier because now Sam and Frank actually finished first. And because they were able to work together with the paddling, which was
Mhm.
good. Adam and Steve got second. Melissa and Nicole got third. And then Shane and Devon ended up last here. But I feel like this one I could have done well in. I'm actually, since I'm going paddle boarding today, I'm like, I know how
Oh
to paddle.
yeah,
But yeah, so what did you think about this one?
it was fine. I feel
Yeah.
like kind of forgettable. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't have many thoughts on it.
I almost forgot until I was like, "Oh, yeah, this
Yeah,
one happened."
yeah, yeah. It was fine. I feel like they just kind of had to come up with something.
Yeah. Okay, well, so now this one is the 7th checkpoint is the shoulder the load. So here the teams will race to the water where they'll have to find a stick with 2 Vietnamese bowls on it, fill up the bowls and carry them back together, and they have to fill up the water vial. So here Shane and Devon finish first. Adam and Steve get second, but then Frank and Sam and Melissa and Nicole both timed out here. They weren't able to get their groove, or Sam was not able to move as quickly as Frank was hoping. And Melissa and Nicole just were getting mad at each other, basically. But what were your thoughts here?
This one seemed really hard. I think I would have timed out on this one, honestly. Like that felt so frustrating and hard. I don't know. I applaud Shane and Davon for how well they did on this. And Steve and Adam. But yeah, I this one felt very, very difficult.
Yeah, for sure.
And this
And
one was the one where, really at the end, Frank and Sam had a big, like, come come to Jesus moment, I guess. Like where Frank was like, you gotta change this up or we're, like I think at this point they knew they weren't probably going to win. But I think that Frank got really, really frustrated to his breaking point with Sam. And Melissa and Nicole had a very bad moment too. Like they both of those teams came out of this checkpoint at probably their lowest point, it felt like.
yeah, No, that was a rough one to watch too, but I think, like, it was just Sam just breaking down and or Frank breaking down and then
Yeah.
Sam just being like, "Well, I can't do anything else." It was just like
Yeah. I
yeah.
think that Frank, you could see him internally struggling between like not wanting to treat Sam like he did, or at least like come across like he was treating Sam like he did back in their, in their previous season together, but also being like, I want to win this. And like, I'm being drugged down by Sam, and I don't know how to communicate that to her without coming across as being aggressive and overbearing. And like, I just feel like he like didn't know what to do. He was kind of just like at a loss and really just internally struggling with that. And that was it was fascinating to watch, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And now we're at the eighth checkpoint here. So they have to balance them all, is what it's called. And there are 20 tote bags, and there are different weights. And each team has to put all the bags on the teeter totter to perfectly balance them. And then each partner also must get on one side of it and then account for their weight as well, and then have to balance it together. So this one, I feel like it was kind of just like, okay, who's gonna get this one first?
Yeah,
And so Adam and Steve finished this one first, then Shane and Davon, then Frank and Sam, and then Melissa and Nicole finished up last there. So, what did you think as the final checkpoint here?
well, I thought it was really interesting that like if Adam and Steve and Shane and Davon had switched places here, they would have tied at the end, and I don't know what they would have done. I guess maybe like, I don't know. I really don't know what they would have done in that situation, what the tiebreaker would have been. I guess they probably had some sort of tiebreaker ready, or some way of like calculating who was faster overall when you combine everything. I don't know. But that would have been very interesting. But especially because they were the first two, so it very easily could have, switched, been the other way around, and we would have had an interesting ending.
I know, because as we see, which we kind of already expected this because of watching it throughout, it was more just seeing who was going to get first or second. This one really did determine that
Hmm.
happening. But in the final placements, in fourth place was Melissa and Nicole with 13 stars, and they end up with $5,000. Third place was Frank and Sam with 16 stars, which was $10,000. And then in second place was Shane and Davon. They had 23 stars, only with 35,000. And then the winners were Steve and Adam with 24. So it's 24 to 23, which was so close. And because of
Crazy.
that, Steve and Adam had $250,000. And then they had the option to either split or steal the money, and if their answers don't match, then one of them would have to they would have to play a game to see who would win. Or no, what is it? Or the playoff? What is
Yeah,
the
I don't know that I quite understood, but it was like a
yeah.
one game playoff, he said, for all the money. So I guess like they would have to compete in some challenge to determine which one of them got all the money and the other end up with zero.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen because they both said split. So they split up the money. They each get $125,000.
Yeah.
So a good chunk of money there.
Yeah, I was not
Um,
surprised that they both split. Neither of them seemed like the type that would steal the money from the other, even if they maybe, and they were on pretty fine, good terms by the end of this season. But even at the start of the season, I feel like neither of them would have decided to steal.
I know, same. And it was good to see that it ended in a happy note because Adam also says in his final confessional that he is proposing to his girlfriend Avery. So he said that's what he was going to do with his money, and then he won. So he was like proposing on the video, I guess.
Yeah, so
But
he was like, basically he was proposing in real life as
yeah,
the episode was airing, I guess. And
yeah,
that was cute. Avery was on season 40. Like she's a challenger as well. And they met on All Stars 4, and so it's very cute. And Avery was, I think, tweeting during it or something, being like, "Yes, yes," like as the episode was airing. So that was a cute way of proposing, I think, considering
yeah.
that they weren't like both together there in person.
I thought that was cute too. So that's a wrap on season of this All Stars season, with which was Rivals. Do you have any hopes for All Stars season 6?
I hope it happens. It
Yeah.
seems like it's not probably going to be filmed allegedly before season 42. They're focusing on that first, but it's not like fully canceled or anything. So I hope we get it back eventually. Absolutely. I think it's All Stars is really fun. I think that they went a little too far this season, I think, in like the definition of All Star and making it a little bit like too loosey goosey of like anyone can be considered an all star who's been on the show before versus the original idea of it where it was like fully focused on the old school like Real World Road Rules cast members. And I think if they went back to that and differentiated it more from like the flagship show, and in terms of its casting, I think that that would probably be a better serve the show. But because I think most of the audience for All Stars is people who have been watching since back then. I don't think they're going to get a bunch of new fans for the challenge on All Stars. So I think they just need to focus on really making those like OG fans content and happy with the casting and the formats and things like that. So yeah, I hope that they do that, but I really hope it comes back because this was really fun. I love just kind of a shorter, quicker, more straightforward season of the challenge.
Yeah, definitely. It was good that it was pretty fast paced and just overall wasn't too long. I feel like that's what's hard about some of the challenge
Yeah,
seasons for me. It's just like how long they
they're very
are.
long.
So I like that this one was a lot shorter.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I will be continuing to watch the challenge now that I've started and getting into it more. But that's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you're subscribed to us wherever you get your podcasts, and also follow us on social media at Let's Chat Reality. And we'll chat with y'all next week. Thanks so much for listening.
Bye, everyone.